You mortgaged the house? My voice wavered as I stared at the documents in my shaking hands. Mark, please tell me this isn't real. He remained silent. Instead of facing me, he slumped down on the couch, his face buried in his hands, looking like a child caught in a moment of unforgivable wrongdoing. The room seemed to grow heavier with every passing second, the silence suffocating me. I gripped the papers tighter, my vision blurring as the words on the page began to twist. Line holder. First Capital Mortgage. Outstanding balance. $200,000. My name is Karen Bennett. I'm 42 years old, a nurse, and the mother of two wonderful children, Mia and Dylan, who are 10 and 13, respectively. For as long as I can remember, I've been the steady one, the foundation, the person others rely on. My mornings start before dawn, as I juggle school drop-offs, 12-hour shifts at the hospital, and a never-ending to-do list that comes with running a household. Mark and I have been married for 15 years, and while we've had our share of challenges, I always believed we were in this together. We may not have been perfect, but I thought we shared trust, or at least that's what I believed. I took care of the daily finances while Mark handled the bigger issues like taxes and insurance. I never thought twice about questioning him, never suspected he could hide something this significant from me. Until now. It all started when I stumbled upon a letter buried beneath a pile of unopened mail. I had been cleaning the kitchen after dinner, muttering under my breath about how Mark always left the paperwork to pile up. I was ready to toss it in the trash, assuming it was junk, but something about the envelope made me stop. The First Capital Mortgage logo was embossed in the corner, and my stomach dropped as I tore it open. The words hit me like a blow to the chest. Our home, the one we worked so hard to buy, the place where our children grew up, had been put up as collateral for a loan I didn't even know existed. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Mark would never do something like this. But as I read the details, the sinking feeling in my chest morphed into a whirlwind of dread. This wasn't a mistake. He had done this and hadn't told me. By the time I confronted him, my mind was racing with questions. How could he have kept this from me? How could he have risked our home, our children's security? Mark barely glanced at me as I waved the papers in front of him, demanding an explanation. It's not what you think, he muttered, his voice barely audible. Then tell me what it is, I snapped. Because from where I stand, it looks like you mortgaged our house without telling me. Do you even realize what this means, Mark? Do you even care? He exhaled slowly, his breath unsteady, before meeting my gaze. I didn't have a choice, Karen. I was in a tight spot. I froze. A tight spot? I repeated, my voice trembling. What kind of tight spot could possibly justify this? He hesitated. In that moment, everything clicked. The late nights, the excuses about why he couldn't attend Mia's soccer games or Dylan's school performances, it all fell into place. I whispered, barely able to find my voice, it's the gambling, isn't it? Mark's silence was all the confirmation I needed. This wasn't the first time he had put us in this situation. Years ago, when Dylan was just a baby, Mark had lost a large part of his paycheck gambling on college basketball games, and I had discovered it when our credit card bill was unusually high. He promised it was a one-time mistake, swearing it would never happen again. I believed him, because that's what you do when you love someone. You trust them, even when you shouldn't. But this was different. This wasn't just a credit card bill. This was our home. Our lives. How much? I asked, my voice cold. Karen, how much, Mark? About 100,000, he confessed, his gaze fixed on the floor. I thought I could pay it back before it went this far. I just needed more time. $100,000. It felt like all the air had been sucked from the room. How could you do this? I whispered, my eyes stinging with tears. How could you risk everything like this? The kids, Mark. What happens to Mia and Dylan if we lose the house? He reached out to me, but I stepped back, shaking my head. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he pleaded. I swear, I'll fix it. But I didn't believe him. Not this time. That night, long after Mark had fallen asleep on the couch, I lay awake, my thoughts racing. Anger, Fear and betrayal stormed through me as I thought about the kids and how I'd have to shield them from this mess while trying to keep our lives intact. I thought about the years I had spent trusting Mark, the blind faith I'd placed in him, and how it had all led to this. When the first light of dawn appeared, I had made my decision. I couldn't wait for Mark to fix this. I had to take control, for my sake and for the children. The days following the discovery of the mortgage felt like a haze. Mark and I barely spoke. Our conversations were reduced to short exchanges about the kids or whose turn it was to take out the trash. Each time I looked at him, waves of anger and betrayal surged inside me. From the moment I found out about the mortgage, things between Mark and me felt different. We barely communicated, our interactions limited to brief talks about the kids or simple household matters. Whenever I looked at him, I couldn't shake the overwhelming feelings of anger and betrayal. How could the man I once trusted with everything jeopardize our future? Fortunately, the kids seemed unaware, at least at the beginning. Dylan was too focused on his science project, and Mia was occupied with her soccer practice for an upcoming tournament. However, I knew it wouldn't be long before they started sensing something was wrong. Mark had always been the fun parent, the one who stayed up late playing video games with Dylan or allowed Mia to paint his nails during their spa nights. Recently, though, he had grown distant and distracted, and I could see the confusion slowly creeping into their eyes. One evening, after I had tucked the kids into bed, I finally broke the silence. "We can't keep going like this, Mark," I said, my voice calm but firm. "The mortgage, the debts, the gambling, it's all too much. You need help." He let out a sigh, rubbing his face in frustration. "I told you, Karen, I'm handling it." "No," I snapped, slamming the dish towel down onto the counter. "You're not. You've been handling it for months, and look where we are now. If you were truly managing it, we wouldn't be on the edge of losing our home." His face twisted in frustration. "What do you want me to do? Quit my job? Sell my car?" "I'm doing the best I can." "Your best isn't good enough," I fired back, my voice shaking with anger. "Do you even understand the gravity of what you've done? You didn't just put yourself at risk, you put all of us at risk. Me, the kids. Do you even care?" The question hung in the air, and I could see it hit him hard. He stood there, jaw clenched, his fists balling at his sides. But instead of responding, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The following day, I called Sarah. Without a second thought, she answered, "Come over," her voice steady and firm. Now, Sarah's apartment was the complete opposite of the chaos I was living in, orderly, minimalist, and peacefully quiet. She handed me a cup of tea as I sank into her couch, feeling the weight of everything that had happened over the past few days. "Okay," she said, sitting across from me. "Tell me everything." I poured it all out, the mortgage, the debts, the gambling, and the endless arguments. By the time I was done, my tea had gone cold, and Sarah was looking at me with a mix of disbelief and anger. That complete fool," she muttered, shaking her head. "Karen, you can't let him drag you down with him. You need to protect yourself and the kids." "How?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I don't even know where to begin. I feel like I'm drowning." She leaned forward, her expression softening. "First things first," she began. "You need to find a lawyer. Someone who can help you figure out your options. I know a woman, Jennifer Morales. She's fantastic. I'll give you her number." Meeting Jennifer felt like a lifeline. Her office was warm and welcoming, with framed diplomas on the walls and a gentle scent of lavender filling the air. She listened attentively as I explained the situation, nodding as I described Mark's gambling and our mounting debts. "You're not the first person I've helped through something like this," she said after I finished. "And you won't be the last. The good news is, there are steps we can take to protect you and your children." "Like what?" I asked, clutching my bag tightly. "For starters," she explained, "we can separate your finances from Mark's. That means opening your own bank account, having your paychecks deposited there, and setting up a budget that doesn't depend on his income. We'll also look at the mortgage and see if there's any way to renegotiate the terms or delay foreclosure." Her advice was practical, calm, and exactly what I needed to hear. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. Back at home, I started making changes. I opened a new bank account, transferred my direct deposit, and ensured Mark couldn't touch any of my earnings. I went through our bills, marking the ones I could afford to pay on my own and making arrangements for the others. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Meanwhile, the tension between Mark and me only deepened. He still insisted that he could fix everything and that I was overreacting, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I had spent years being the steady one, the one who smoothed over his mistakes, but this time, I wasn't going to do that. One night, as we sat in the heavy silence following another argument, he looked at me and said, "You're really going to do this, aren't you? You're going to cut me out." "I'm not cutting you out, Mark," I replied, my voice steady but resolute. "I'm protecting myself and the kids. Until you get help and start taking responsibility for what you've done, I can't rely on you." I won't. Despite everything, there were still moments of doubt. I would find myself staring at old photos of us from when things were good and wonder if I was making the right decision. What if he really could turn things around? What if this was just a rough patch and I was giving up too soon? But then I would think of the mortgage, the debts, and the look in Mia's eyes when she asked why her dad seemed so sad all the time. I wasn't doing this just for me. I was doing this for them. For their future. The tipping point came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I sat in Jennifer's office, poring over the mortgage documents once again, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark. "We need to talk. I can fix this, but I need you to stop whatever you're doing with the lawyer. You're only making it worse." I stared at the screen, feeling a familiar rush of frustration and fatigue building inside me. Worse? He was the one who had gambled away our future, and now he wanted to blame me for trying to clean up the mess he had created? My hands shook as I placed the phone face down on Jennifer's desk. "He's trying to manipulate you," Jennifer said calmly, her sharp gaze fixed on me. "Don't let him. We're so close to resolving this." The word, resolved, sounded simple enough, but the path to getting here had been anything but. Jennifer had uncovered the fact that Mark had secretly taken out 2 additional loans against the house, each with higher interest rates than the last. Together, these loans added up to over $240,000. The sheer magnitude of it made my stomach churn, but Jennifer assured me that there was still hope. "You have 2 options," she had said in our last meeting. "You can try to save the house by restructuring the loans, but that would require Mark's cooperation, and given his track record, that's a big risk. Or you can fight for sole financial control, which might mean selling the house and starting fresh." The thought of selling our home, the place where my children had grown up, was nearly unbearable. But the idea of staying connected to Mark's mess was far worse. A week later, we sat across from each other in a small, sterile office room. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air heavy with unspoken blame and barely restrained anger. Jennifer sat next to me, her calm yet powerful presence a steadying force, while Mark, with his lawyer, someone who looked just as untrustworthy as Mark himself, sat across from us. "This doesn't have to get ugly," Mark said, leaning forward in his chair. "We can work this out if you'll just stop trying to tear everything apart." "Tear everything apart?" I repeated, my voice shaking with disbelief. "You're the one who put us here, Mark. You lied to me, gambled away our savings, and mortgaged the house without even telling me. And now you want me to just... what? Pretend none of it happened." "I made a mistake," he said, defensive. "But I can fix this if you just..." "No," I interrupted, my voice steady but resolute. "You can't fix this. Not this time. I've spent far too much of my life cleaning up after you, Mark. I'm done." His lawyer cleared his throat and shuffled through a pile of papers. "If I may," he began, "we believe that Mr. Bennett has a right to remain on the mortgage and his financial contributions." "Contributions?" Jennifer cut him off, her voice sharp. "Let's be clear. Mr. Bennett's contributions are exactly what got us into this mess. My client has proof that he took out these loans without her consent, violated the terms of their joint finances, and put their children's home at risk. If we're talking about rights, Mrs. Bennett has every right to protect herself and her family from further harm." Mark's lawyer hesitated, his face turning a shade of red, while Mark looked furious. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I took a deep breath, gathering my strength to look him in the eye. No, Mark, what's ridiculous is what you've done to this family. You've lied, endangered our future, and refused to take responsibility. But I won't let you drag me down with you anymore. I'm taking control of my life and the kids' lives, whether you like it or not. The mediator, trying to calm the rising tension, guided the conversation toward practical solutions. In the end, it came down to one final decision: the house. Mark insisted he wanted to keep it, claiming it was for the kids. But I knew the truth. He wanted the house because it was a means of control, a symbol of power. Letting him keep it would only mean staying tied to his debts and the chaos he had caused. I'm willing to sell the house, I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my throat. It's the only way to move forward. Mark stared at me, his face a mixture of shock and anger. You're really going to sell the house? The kids' home? After everything? Yes, I replied firmly. Because what matters isn't the house. It's their future. And I won't let you jeopardize that anymore. The remainder of the session was a blur of paperwork and legal terms. By the time we left, I felt as though I had just run a marathon. But as I stepped out of the building, the weight that had been on my chest for so long seemed lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't cleaning up after Mark's mistakes. I was building a future that didn't depend on him. The victory wasn't flashy. There was no dramatic applause or triumphant music playing in the background. But it was mine. I had taken full control of the finances, arranged for the sale of the house to settle the debts, and established a trust for the children with whatever remained. It wasn't the conclusion I had envisioned, but it marked a fresh start. And for that, I felt thankful. The first night in the new apartment was filled with mixed emotions. The kids were already asleep in their rooms, smaller than they were used to, yet cozy. The stacked boxes scattered around the living room made it feel less like a permanent place and more like a temporary stop. I sat on the couch, sipping my tea, and gazed out the window at the city lights. It wasn't home yet, but it felt like a new beginning. And that's exactly what we needed. A sense of relief washed over me knowing that the house and the debts tied to it were behind me. But the exhaustion from the past weeks lingered. The intense legal battles, difficult conversations, and painful decisions had taken their toll on me. While my chest felt lighter, my heart still carried a deep ache. Losing the home where so many memories had been created wasn't easy, but I reminded myself that it wasn't the walls and roof that made a family. It was the love and stability I could now provide for Mia and Dylan. The next morning, Mark called. His number appeared on my phone like a shadow I couldn't escape. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but I knew better. This was something I couldn't run away from. Karen, he began, his voice unexpectedly soft. I just wanted to check in, see how you and the kids are doing. We're fine, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. We're settling in. There was a long pause before he spoke again. Look, I know I messed up, he said, his voice sincere. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I want to make it right. I want us to try again. His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. For a moment, I felt the old pull, the part of me that always wanted to fix things, to smooth over the cracks and make everything right. But then, I thought about the mortgage, the lies, and the chaos he had brought into our lives. I remembered the tears I had shed and the strength it had taken to move forward. I can't do that, Mark, I said, my voice steady. Not this time. Karen, please, he begged, desperation in his tone. I can change. Then change, I replied simply. But I'm not waiting for you anymore. I ended the call, setting the phone down with a slight tremble in my hand. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Mark's words no longer had the same power over me. I was no longer his fixer. I was my own person. Later that evening, as I tucked Mia and Dylan into bed, a deep sense of gratitude washed over me. The apartment might not have been perfect, but it was ours. Mia had taped a rainbow drawing on her wall, and Dylan had already started organizing his books in his new corner bookshelf. They were adjusting, little by little, and so was I. Sitting down on the couch once again, I let myself reflect on everything we had been through, the fear, the anger, and the uncertainty. It had all been overwhelming at times, but I had made it through. I had fought for my children, for my future, and for myself. And I had won. I wasn't the same person who had found those mortgage papers in the kitchen. That version of Karen had been scared, blindsided, and unsure of what to do. This Karen was stronger, more confident, and unafraid to stand up for what she deserved. It hadn't been an easy journey, but it had been worth it. As I closed my eyes, the weight of the day slowly lifting, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. This wasn't just a new chapter, it was an entirely new book, and I was eager to see where it would lead. A few months later, everything had changed, and it was for the better. The chaos Mark had brought into my life no longer controlled my days. The apartment had become a home, filled with laughter and new memories. Mia had painted a mural on her wall with vibrant handprints in all colors of the rainbow, and Dylan had developed an interest in baking, proudly presenting his latest batch of cookies after school. We were still adjusting, but there was a lightness in our lives that had been missing before. At work, things were thriving. I had taken on an additional certification program and joined a committee focused on nurse advocacy. For years, I had avoided leadership roles, content to stay in the background, but something had shifted in me. I found myself speaking up more, sharing my ideas, and pushing for changes I knew could make a real difference. My manager even hinted at a promotion, something I would have dismissed as impossible a year ago, but now it felt like the natural next step. But the most significant change had been in how I viewed myself. For years, I had defined my worth by what I could do for others, how I could fix their problems or hold things together when they fell apart. Mark's betrayal had forced me to realize that I couldn't always be the fixer. Sometimes the most important thing I could do was protect myself and my children, even if it meant letting go of things I had once held onto tightly. I was no longer afraid to set boundaries or say no. When Mark called again, asking if he could visit the kids, I told him that we needed clear agreements in place before anything could be arranged. "I'm glad to be working with you," I said to him, "but only if it's something that benefits the kids and is healthy." The old version of me might have hesitated, but this version of me knew my value. His reply? A disgruntled, "Fine." That was clearly frustrating for him, though he didn't argue further. That moment alone felt like a win. One Saturday morning, Sarah dropped by with coffee and muffins, her way of celebrating. "To the new me," she said with a teasing smile, raising her cup as if toasting, "Look at you, living your best life." I laughed, shaking my head. "It doesn't feel like my best life just yet, but it does feel stable, peaceful." "That's because you're finally putting yourself first," she pointed out, offering a knowing glance. "About time, right?" I smiled, the truth of her words settling in. She was right, it had taken too long. For so many years, I had buried myself beneath the needs and expectations of others. Now, I was learning to trust my own judgment, speak up for what I wanted, and believe that I deserved a good life, not just for my children, but for myself too. That evening, as I sat on the balcony, sipping a glass of wine while watching the sunset, I allowed myself to feel proud. Proud of the struggles I had faced and the ones I had chosen to leave behind. Proud of the life I was creating, maybe not the one I originally envisioned, but one that felt authentic and real. The path ahead might not be perfect, and I knew there would be hurdles along the way, but at last, I felt ready to face them. This was my life, reclaimed and reconstructed. And it was only just beginning. Hey, did you enjoy the story? If you did, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps a lot and ensures you won't miss out on more amazing stories we'll be sharing. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.